The email arrived at 2:47 a.m. Subject line, final family decision. My brother Marcus didn't waste words. We're moving forward with the sale. Your signature isn't required. Dad would have wanted this. Below it, my cousin Jade had already replied with a thumbs up emoji. I sat in the darkness of my Chicago apartment, the glow of the screen illuminating something I'd spent 32 years trying not to see. They weren't asking for my blessing. They were announcing my irrelevance. So I closed my laptop, and for the first time in my life, I stopped protecting people who had never once protected me. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're listening from, so I know I'm not alone. My name is Sienna, and in my family, I was the translator. Not of languages, but of needs, emotions, complications. The one who made hard things simple for everyone else. The one who absorbed chaos so others could stay comfortable. We're Ethiopian American, third generation. And to the outside world, we look like the model immigrant success story. My father, Dawit, built a small commercial printing business from nothing. My mother, Almaz, worked as a nurse for 40 years. They raised 3 children in a cramped Baltimore row house that somehow always smelled like fresh injera and coffee ceremonies that lasted until midnight. But inside our family, there were unspoken rules. Marcus, the eldest son, carried the family name and all the privilege that came with it. My younger sister, Leah, was the baby, beautiful and fragile, perpetually in need of rescue. And then there was me, steady, responsible, the one who asked for nothing because I learned early that asking meant disappointment. The only person who ever saw through that was my aunt, my father's older sister, Aunt Meseret. She lived in a small apartment in Silver Spring, surrounded by books in 3 languages and photographs of a life she'd lived before any of us were born. She had this way of sitting in silence that made you want to tell the truth, even the parts that hurt. When I was young, she told me something I didn't understand until much later. Sienna, she said, brushing my hair back from my face, being strong doesn't mean you carry everyone's burden. It means you know which ones are yours. I thought I knew. I thought family meant sacrifice, meant putting yourself last, meant never saying no when someone needed you. I was wrong. When my father died 8 months ago, he left behind the printing business, a small warehouse in East Baltimore, and a life insurance policy none of us knew existed. The policy was modest, but in his handwritten will, he divided it carefully. 1/3 to my mother, 1/3 split between Marcus and Leah, and 1/3 to me, with a single condition, that I use it to finally finish my master's degree in public health, the one I'd abandoned twice to help family members through their crises. It was the first time my father had ever put me first, and it was the last thing he'd ever do. At the funeral, Marcus stood at the podium in a suit I'd helped him pay for 3 years earlier and talked about legacy, about duty, about carrying forward our father's dream. He didn't mention that he'd barely visited Dad in the last 2 years. He didn't mention that it was me who drove to the hospital every evening after work, who sat with Dad through the lonely hours, who held his hand when the morphine made him confused. Leah cried beautifully at the service, her grief performative and loud. Our mother held her, whispering comfort, while I stood to the side, managing the logistics, the caterer, the parking, the family members flying in from Addis Ababa. No one asked if I was okay. They assumed I was because I always was. The trouble started 6 weeks after the funeral. Marcus called a family meeting at Mom's house, the same dining room where we'd grown up, where the table was always too small and the conversations too loud. He brought paperwork, a business valuation, a proposal to sell Dad's warehouse to a developer. It's the smart move, he said, spreading documents across the table. The neighborhood's gentrifying. We'll never get a better offer. Mom needs the money for retirement. We all do. I looked at the numbers. They were good, almost too good. But something felt off. What about Dad's employees? I asked. The 5 people who've worked there for over a decade? Marcus waved his hand dismissively. They'll find other jobs. This is about family. Leah nodded, scrolling through her phone. I already told Tomas I'd help with his startup once we get the money. He's been waiting. Tomas, her boyfriend of 4 months who'd already borrowed $3,000 from her, money I'd quietly loaned her when she couldn't make rent. I need to think about this, I said. My mother's face tightened, that look I knew too well. Sienna, don't complicate this. Your brother knows business. I'm not complicating it. I'm asking questions. You're always asking questions, Leah muttered. Can't you just trust us for once? Trust. The word sat bitter in my mouth. Trust was what I'd given them for 3 decades. Trust was why I had nothing left. That night, I went to see Aunt Meseret. Her apartment was quiet, filled with the scent of cardamom tea and old paper. She sat in her reading chair, her glasses perched on her nose, and waited for me to speak. I told her everything. The sale, the pressure, the feeling that something was being taken from me, though I couldn't name what. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Your father put that condition on your inheritance for a reason. He knew they would try to use you. He was trying to give you permission to choose yourself. But if I don't sign, I'm the villain. And if you do sign," she said gently, "you erase the last thing he ever tried to give you." Her words hung in the air like smoke. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything began to shift. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. I'd agreed to meet Marcus at the warehouse to discuss details, though I'd already told him I needed more time. When I arrived, I found him standing with a man in an expensive suit, a real estate developer, shaking hands like a deal had already closed. "Sienna." "Perfect timing," Marcus said, too casual, too bright. "Mr. Chin wanted to see the property before we finalize. I told him you'd be reasonable." I felt my chest tighten. "You told him what?" "That we're all on the same page. That we want what's best for the family." Mr. Chin extended his hand. I didn't take it. "This property isn't for sale," I said quietly. Marcus laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Sienna, come on. Don't do this here. You brought him here without telling me. You made promises on behalf of all of us. You're acting like my signature doesn't matter." "It doesn't." He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that for a second I thought I'd misheard. "Excuse me. I talked to a lawyer. Dad's will has a clause. If one heir becomes unreasonable or obstructive, the others can proceed with a majority decision. Mom's already signed. Leah's signing tomorrow. We don't need you." The air felt thin, like I was standing at altitude. Mr. Chin shifted uncomfortably, murmuring something about coming back another time, and left. I stared at my brother, at the man I'd bailed out of credit card debt, whose car I'd co-signed for, whose wedding I'd helped pay for when he overspent on the venue. "Did you ever even read Dad's will?" I asked. "The part where he wanted me to go back to school?" "Sienna, you're 32. If you wanted a degree, you'd have finished it by now." Dad was being sentimental. He was being intentional. He was being naive, Marcus snapped. "You don't get to hold the whole family hostage because you have some fantasy about grad school. We need this money. Mom needs it. Leah needs it. Stop being selfish." Selfish. The word landed like a slap. I'd given them everything, my time, my money, my presence at every crisis, and the one time I hesitated, I was selfish. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out of that warehouse, got in my car, and drove straight to Aunt Meseret's apartment. She opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been waiting. I collapsed onto her couch, and for the first time since my father's funeral, I let myself break. "They're taking it," I whispered. "Everything Dad wanted for me." She sat beside me, her hand on my back, letting me breathe through the grief. When I finally looked up, she said, "Then we fight back. But not their way. Your way." I spent that weekend at Aunt Meseret's kitchen table, piecing together the truth like a puzzle I'd been too afraid to solve. She made coffee, strong and dark, and watched as I pulled documents from my bag. The will, the business valuation, the insurance policy, the sale proposal. "Start at the beginning," she said. "What does the will actually say?" I read it aloud, slowly, and for the first time, I saw what I'd missed. My father's clause about being unreasonable or obstructive wasn't a loophole. It required proof, mediation, court approval. Marcus had lied. He'd counted on me not checking, on me being too tired or too compliant to verify. "He manipulated you," Aunt Meseret said softly. "He counted on your guilt." I felt something harden inside me, something that had been soft for too long. "What else?" she asked. I pulled out the business valuation. It was dated 2 months before my father died, commissioned by Marcus without telling anyone. The price was high, suspiciously high, and the buyer was an LLC I didn't recognize. Aunt Meseret peered at the paperwork. "Do you know who owns this company?" I didn't, but I knew someone who could find out. On Monday morning, I called an old colleague from my public health work, a woman named Kara who'd gone into nonprofit law. I explained the situation, the sale, the pressure, the clause Marcus had weaponized. She was quiet for a beat. "Sienna, if your father's will specifies mediation, they can't proceed without it. And if they're rushing the sale, there's a reason. Let me dig into this LLC." 2 days later, she called back. "You're not going to believe this. The LLC that wants to buy the warehouse, it's partially owned by Marcus. He set it up 4 months ago, right after your dad's diagnosis got worse. He's not just selling the property. He's selling it to himself at a markup and pocketing the difference. The room spun. My brother wasn't just dismissing me. He was defrauding us all. What do I do? I asked. You file for an emergency injunction. You stop the sale. And you expose what he's doing before he can hide it. I called Aunt Meseret immediately. She didn't hesitate. Do it. I'll be there with you. That Friday, I walked into a courthouse in downtown Baltimore with Kara and Aunt Meseret at my side. Marcus, Leah, and my mother were already there, sitting in the hallway outside the mediation room, looking annoyed and impatient. When Marcus saw me, his jaw tightened. Sienna, what are you doing? Stopping you, I said simply. Leah stood up. Are you serious right now? You're taking us to court. You took me out of the equation, I replied. So I'm putting myself back in. My mother's face was pale, her hands gripping her purse. Sienna, this is family. We don't do this to each other. Then why did Marcus? I asked, looking directly at him. His face went blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Kara stepped forward, calm and composed, and handed him a folder. These are the corporate filings for the LLC purchasing the warehouse. The one you're a partial owner of. The one you failed to disclose to your family. The color drained from his face. Leah's eyes went wide. My mother gasped, a small, broken sound. That's not, Marcus stammered. You don't understand. Then explain it, I said, my voice steady. Explain why you're selling our father's business to yourself. Explain why you lied about the will. Explain why you told me I didn't matter. He couldn't. He stood there silent, exposed, and for the first time in my life, I saw him as he truly was. Not the golden son, not the capable leader, just a man who'd gotten used to taking what wasn't his. The mediator called us in. For 3 hours, we sat in that small, sterile room while Kara laid out the case, the forged urgency, the hidden ownership, the deliberate exclusion. Marcus tried to argue, to justify, to reframe his actions as business strategy. But every word only made it worse. Leah cried. Real tears this time, not performative. I didn't know, she kept saying. I didn't know. My mother sat rigid, her face unreadable, until finally she spoke. Dawit would be ashamed. Marcus flinched like she'd struck him. By the end, the mediator issued a temporary injunction, halting the sale. He ordered a full review of the business, the valuation, and Marcus's involvement. And he mandated that all decisions moving forward required unanimous family consent, not a majority. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. Outside the courthouse, my mother pulled me aside. Her eyes were red, her voice thin. You didn't have to humiliate him. He humiliated himself, I said. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I'd always been a stranger, just playing the role they needed. Aunt Meseret took my hand. Let's go home. As we walked away, Marcus called after me, his voice cracking. Sienna, wait. Please. I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say. In the months that followed, the business was independently appraised. The real value was 30% lower than Marcus's inflated offer. The employees, the ones he dismissed so casually, were given the option to buy the warehouse collectively, turning it into a worker-owned co-op. They did. My father would have loved that. My share of the estate was protected. I used it exactly as Dad intended. I enrolled in my master's program, public health with a focus on elder advocacy, inspired by Aunt Meseret, by every older person in our community who'd been silenced or sidelined. Marcus and I don't speak anymore. Leah sends occasional texts, apologies that feel hollow, requests for absolution I can't give. My mother calls on holidays, and we talk about weather, about nothing, the way strangers do. But Aunt Meseret and I have coffee every Sunday. We sit in her small kitchen, and she asks me about my classes, my research, my life. And I tell her the truth, all of it, because she taught me that honesty isn't cruelty. It's respect. Looking back, I used to think loyalty meant erasing yourself for the people you love. But real loyalty, the kind that sustains you, is mutual. It's built on truth, not convenience. It protects, not just expects. My family's choices didn't break me. They clarified me. And walking away from people who only value my silence wasn't abandonment. It was self-preservation. If this story resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.